Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be teaching you the basics of corner-to-corner crochet, also known as C2C, or the diagonal box stitch. Here, I've got just a little bit showing. It's quite big, so I can't fit it all on screen right now, but this is the llama and cactus corner-to-corner blanket, which is a free pattern on mooglyblog.com. I have other corner-to-corner patterns, and of course, there are hundreds out there across the web. But I wanted to do a couple videos here going through the basics of corner-to-corner crochet so that you can then use this technique on any project and any pattern you like. For this demonstration, I will be using Red Heart with Love and a Furls K-hook. Those just happen to be the same ones I used for this free pattern. If you'd like links to the yarn, the hook, or this free pattern, as well as the right and left-handed video tutorials, please be sure to visit the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and get started learning how to corner-to-corner crochet. Okay, there are a couple different common methods for making the corner-to-corner stitch, but I think the most common one is using double crochets. So that's the one I used in the llama and cactus blanket and the one I'm going to demo for you here today. With a slip knot on our hook, the same way we start most crochet projects, we are going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then, at this point, I should point out, I like to work into this back hump. If you look at a chain, this is the back hump, and here's that top V you might be used to working into. I really like to work into that back hump at this point. It's just a little bit easier, you don't have to twist that chain at all, and you end up with a nicer edge for any edging you might work into it. So, after you've chained 6, we're going to yarn over, skip the first 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and double crochet in each of the remaining chains. So we start with a double crochet in that first chain, after the skipped 3, that is. Then in the next, and then finally a double crochet in that last chain. Mine does not want to go in there. There we go. All right. Now, with that double crochet made, what we have here is 1 block. Now, with corner-to-corner afghans like this, or any corner-to-corner project, not just afghans, the block here is your basic unit sort of measurement. If you've got your first row, it is 1 block. The second row will be 2 blocks. The third row will be 3 blocks, and so on until you decide to start working evenly or decreasing. So row 1 is this 1 block. All of this right here counts as 1 block. So I just want you to keep that in mind going forward. So now we're ready to begin row 2. So to begin row 2 of a corner-to-corner project, we're going to start again with 6 chains. 1, 2, 3. Gotta pull up a little bit more yarn here. There we go. 4, 5, and 6. Now, at this point, again, you need to make a decision if you want to work into those back humps or under those top loops. I like to continue working into those back humps. We're otherwise going to work it the same way. Skip those first 3 and work a double crochet in the remaining 3. So there's 1 double crochet, our second double crochet, and finally our third double crochet. Right there, right up next to that first block. Now at this point, because we worked into those back chains, we haven't really turned yet, or the back humps, I should say. So I like to be really consistent about the way I turn my blocks to work into them. If you turn basically up like this every time, I find it gives me a really nice straight edge along my project. So just remember, if you turn it this way, you want to go ahead and turn that next block up like that every time. So once again, we've made that second block there. We're going to turn that first one up and insert our hook in that chain 3 space. Remember, we skipped those 3 chains. We're going to put our hook right in that chain 3 space and slip stitch. Just pull it right on tight. Don't have to worry about working back into it. You can pull it nice and tight if you like to, just like so. So now that's the first block right there of our second row. So now we're ready to make the second block of the second row. So we start this one with just a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to work those 3 double crochets all into this chain 3 space. So we just yarn over and go right in that chain 3 space there and work 3 double crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3, like so. So if I pull my hook out here and turn it this way, you can see we have 1 block in row 1, and then we came back here. Row 2 is 2 blocks, 1 and 2. So that's it for row 2. You can see we're increasing out from the sides. And if we were looking at this, if we were making an afghan or something square or rectangle or a washcloth, whatever that is, this would be one side. This would maybe be the bottom side. That could end up being the bottom. You know, however you end up wanting to turn it, doesn't really matter. But we're just going to keep expanding like this until it's time to work even or decrease. So let's make a couple more increasing rows together. So remember, we had 1 block on our first row, 2 blocks on our second row. We're going to end up making 3 blocks on our third row. And if you can kind of picture it, those blocks are going to go here for the first one, here for the second one, and here for the third one. So let's go ahead and make those now together. Now the first block of every row is going to start with 6 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, just as we were doing before. Then we skip those first 3 chains and make a double crochet in each of the remaining ones. 1, 2, and 3, right there. Now again, we need to sort of finally turn our work, so I want to turn it the same way. I'm going to flip it up towards me that direction. That brings that chain 3 space right there, so I can put my hook right in there and make my slip stitch to attach that block to the side, just like so. So you can see we're maintaining our straight edge right there. Now we need to make 2 more blocks. So the first one, we make chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Pull up just a little bit more yarn here. There we go. And now we can make 3 double crochets in this chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. There we are. Now, at this point, we need to slip stitch to this next block right here. You can see this has brought us right over here to this next chain 3 space. So we just put our hook in there and make that slip stitch. And finally, we're ready to make that third block. We chain 3 and make 3 double crochets all right back in that same chain 3 space, just as before. 1 and 2 and 3. Like that. And with that, we've made our third row. So we've got our first row with 1 block, our second row with 2 blocks, and our third row with 3 blocks. 1, 2, and 3. So for our fourth row, we would have 4 blocks. We'll have another one here, another one here, another one here, and another one here on the end. So you can get a really good visual representation of how these blocks grow as you grow the pattern. Let's go ahead and do 1 more increase row together. We will start again with a chain 6, just as we begin every row, as long as we're increasing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we skip those first 3 chains and double crochet in each of the next 3 chains. 1 and 2 and 3. There we are. Like so. And then, pull up a little bit more yarn here. It was getting a little tight there. And then from there, we can flip it up again. Remember, we want to turn it the same direction every time. Make sure you just keep that really consistent. And then you're ready to slip stitch right in that chain 3 space right there waiting for you. From there, the next 3 blocks are going to be all the same. Begin with a chain 3, then double crochet 3 right back in that chain space. 1 and 2 and 3. That brings us to the next block we need to connect to. We find that chain 3 space, put our hook right in there and slip stitch. Then we chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and work 3 double crochets right back in that chain 3 space. 1, 2, and 3. Like so. Finally, we've got 1 more to connect to here. We've got that chain 3 space waiting. So we slip stitch in there. Then we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we make 3 double crochets right back in that last chain 3 space. 1, 2, and 3. Now from here, all our increase rows would be the same. We're on our 4th row, so we've got 4 blocks. On our 5th row, we'll have 5 blocks, 6 on 6, etc., etc. That's one of the joys of this pattern. It makes it really easy to figure out where you are. If you have to leave off, you can just count the number of blocks you made in your last row. And as long as you're still in those increases, you'll know exactly what row you are in. Okay, so now that we know how to work those increases, just keep growing just as we've been doing. Start the first block with a chain 6 and work on across. Now let's go ahead and talk about when we want to start working even and then eventually decreasing to finish off our square or rectangle. Now let's talk for a minute and say we want to make this a rectangle and we want it to be 4 blocks wide but 6 blocks long. That means we've made all the increases on this side that we want to make, but we need to keep increasing on this side. So what we're going to do is rather than chaining 6, we're going to go ahead and turn our work, and now we're going to loosely slip stitch into each of these double crochets. And I say loosely simply because I know I'm going to want to come back and put a border on this maybe later, and that will allow me to work into those slip stitches if I need to. So just slip stitch in each one of those across. Best tip I have for if you're working slip stitches and you know you want to work back into them later, make sure those loops are just nice and big before you go ahead and pull that second one on through. Now, after slip stitching in each of those double crochets, we're at that chain 3 space. So let's go ahead and just make a slip stitch right in there. And then you see we're all set up to turn and make our blocks. Now we're not going to have to increase, so there's no chain 6 here. We just chain 3, 2, 3, and then double crochet in each of those blocks. Make 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space across. That same one we just slip stitched to. So if I stop right there, you can see this is our last block on that side. We just slip stitched across and then made a new block right in that chain 3 space. So we're all set up then to keep working across. So we'll slip stitch into the next block and work just as we did before. Since we're still increasing on this end, we will go ahead and work into the side of this block as well. So I will just continue making these blocks as we were before. Slip stitch into that chain 3 space, chain 3, and then 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space, 1, 2, and 3. And then when I get to this last block, I am still increasing on this side. Remember, I want 6 blocks along this edge. So I'll go ahead and work chain 3 and 3 double crochets right in there. 1, 2, and 3. So this gives us 4 blocks along this edge and 5 blocks along this edge, but I wanted 6 on this side. So this is what you do when you've got the increase side and you're going to stop a little early over there. Now, because we're working even essentially at this point, we're not increasing on one side, but we are increasing on the other. I want to point out that our block count remains the same here. We didn't add one here, so instead of having 5 blocks on this row, even though it's the 5th row, we're cutting in on this one, so we've only got 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The same number of blocks as in the previous row, they're just moving off to this side. So we've got 4 along this edge and 5 along this edge, which means we now need to do a row where we increase at the beginning and don't at the end. So let's go ahead and work that together. We're going to start just as before with a chain 6, just as before when we were increasing. So let's see, is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. So then I will double crochet, skip those first 3, of course, double crochet in each of the last 3. 1, 2, and 3. There we are. And then once again, make sure you turn your work that same way, just to maintain that really nice looking edge right there. And then go ahead and work into the row just as before, and it will all be the same right up until we get to that last block. So just as before, we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, I work 3 double crochets in that chain 3 space. 1, 2, and 3. Pull up a little bit more yarn here. Then we go to that next block, slip stitch into there. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets back in that chain space, 2 and 3, slip stitch into that next chain space, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 double crochets in there, 1, 2, and 3. And then you can see we've got our 4 blocks again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're right up to that side. So what we want to do here is simply slip stitch into that block right there so we can anchor this block down like so. And then we're not going to chain again. We're going to go ahead and turn our work. And then remember how we handled that one? We just slip stitch on across the double crochets that we just made until we get right back to that chain 3 space. So there's 1, 2, and 3. We get to that chain 3 space, slip stitch in there, and we're ready to work across again. Now, at this point, let's take another look at our work. We've got those 4 blocks across that we wanted on this edge, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 along this edge. So now it's time to start closing up our little rectangle. What I want to do is get a nice straight edge here and a nice straight edge here so that we finish off our rectangle with great 90-degree angles. So we're simply going to treat this one like we did back here. We chain 3, 1, 2, 3. With a little bit more yarn, we can make our block right in this chain 3 space. 1, 2, 3, like so. Join it to that next chain 3 space. 1, 2, 3, 1. Lots of 3s in this. 2 and 3 for the double crochets. We're almost there. Slip stitch to that next one. 1, 2, 3 for the chains. And oops, caught the yarn a little bit there. Let me pull that back through. Gave myself a little bit of a snag. We'll just give that a wiggle and it'll straighten right out. There we go. 1, 2, and 3. And now, because we don't want to increase along this side at all anymore, pull that through back a little bit. There we go. What we're going to do is just slip stitch in that last chain 3 space, just as we were doing before. And now we turn to work back along this edge. So because we did not add any blocks on this edge or on this edge, now we are decreasing the number of blocks too. Remember before we had 4 blocks in the row. Now we have 3 blocks in the row. 1, 2, and 3. So as we continue decreasing, you can see our next one hopefully will have just 2. 1 there and 1 there. So let's go ahead and make that together. Not going to chain, I'm just going to turn and slip stitch in each of those double crochets I just made. 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch once again, in that chain 3 space. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets back in that chain 3 space. 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch into that next chain 3 space. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And that was our second block, so we just need to slip stitch to this one to make sure it's anchored down. We've got our 2 blocks there, 1 and 2. So now we just need one more little square here. If you hold it up, you can see we just have 1 square missing to finish off our rectangle right there. So that's the one we'll make now. We'll turn our work, slip stitch into each of those double crochets we just made. 1, 2, and 3. Then slip stitch right in that chain 3 space, and we make our final block. We chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3, right back into that chain 3 space. So to finish off our rectangle, before we add any sort of border or edging, we do want to make sure and go ahead and slip stitch in that last chain 3 space so that both sides of that block are connected to our work. From there, you can add a border or edging, or whatever you want to do to your project. But this right here is the basics of the corner to corner stitch. It's how you increase, it's how you work even, and it's how you decrease then to finish off your block. So that's the basics of corner to corner crochet: increasing, working even, and decreasing. In my next video, I will be teaching you how to do the color changes for a corner to corner graphghan. So again, please go to the link in the description for both right and left-handed video tutorials, as well as links to the written pattern for this one, which does have a graph, the yarn, the hook, and everything else you need to get started with corner to corner crochet. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe. If you do have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Have a great day, everybody.